Good afternoon, everyone. We have just hit 6 p.m. on the East Coast, so we are going to get started with today's investor briefing while a few more people are logging on. My name is Alfred. I'm part of the investor relations team at Blockmate, and we'll be assisting with running today's special investor briefing, which will include a detailed presentation on Hyvelo, as well as Blockmate and business model. We're joined today by Blockmate Ventures CEO Justin Rosenberg and Chairman Dominic Carosa, who will provide a detailed presentation on Hyvelo, particularly after the company successfully raised 2.5 million directly into the investee company. It was participated by some big venture capitalists in blockchain space, but I'm sure Dominic will be able to discuss that further. For those of you unfamiliar with Justin, he brings more than 20 years of international experience in capital markets, leading companies from startup to exit. Dominic, likewise, is very well known in global tech circles as a serial entrepreneur, having founded several companies in the early days of the dot-com era, and is still doing so through to the current Web3 era. After the presentation, we will open the floor to questions for Justin and Dom, so we welcome you to submit them. To submit your questions, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen marked by the speech bubbles. Just type them in there, and at the end of the presentation, we'll read them out. With plenty of happening around Blockmate and Hyvelo, I won't take up any more of Justin and Dom's time. Justin, let me hand over to you first.
Thanks, Alfred. With Blockmate, Dominic took over the Blockmate vehicle last year and has been building Hyvelo, a blockchain company, quietly through the crypto winter. And as Alfred just mentioned, we were very pleased to announce the raising last week into Hyvelo. We started beginning of the crypto winter raising $1 million. As the spring kicked in, raised an extension 500,000 at the $5 million US valuation, and continued to get overwhelming interest, not from retail investors, from leading Web3 investors who understand the growth in the deep-in space, which we'll explain more later. And we took the additional 1 million raise at an 80% uplift, being a $9 million pre-money valuation US, which values Blockmate's stake in Hyvelo at 8.1 Canadian cents. At the time of the announcement, I think Blockmate was trading at around 3 cents. So a great testament of the Blockmate vision to build companies from scratch, leveraging off the team's over 20 years experience in building tech companies in fast-growing sectors. And that's what this slide is all about. Thanks, Alfred. So as we just said, we build these companies from scratch, leveraging off our experience, our understanding of the fast-growing sectors, our ability to build the businesses and pivot accordingly as markets change. And as we saw last year, how quickly the markets do change, and the extensive networks that we've been able to build in the startup ecosystem. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Dominic to give you the explanation as to why Hyvelo has gathered so much interest so early in the crypto spring.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Alfred. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominic Carosa. I guess before I jump into Hyvelo, just to sort of try and paint the picture around what is deep-in, and maybe the next slide, Alfred, just to give people a bit of a visual representation. Deep-in is really the next wave of technology and computing. When the internet started, it was really all about infrastructure being decentralized, and ultimately what we're doing is really going back to the core, and so just kind of leading into this new wave of Web3 and deep-in, bringing together a team. The guys have spoken about myself, but we've also got Andrew, who he and I have worked together for almost 20 years. He was one of the co-founders of Banksa. and Justin, and who brings a lot of financial experience, and Arthur as well. So bringing a lot of both crypto as well as Web 2.0 experience to the table, including listing a company onto the Toronto Stock Exchange next. So in terms of DePIN, if you take today's, let's call it assets, centralized assets like mobile carriers, infrastructure providers like Amazon and Google providing hosting, and there are a myriad of other examples. What we're starting to see, and what the DePIN category within Web3 encapsulates, is the decentralization of all of these key nodes, or all of this key infrastructure. And we think this is a tremendous opportunity, and it's only through blockchain and crypto that this has actually become possible to do in this particular sector. And so ultimately what Havelo is doing is bringing together all of these various DePINs, and particularly the ones on your right-hand side, the digital resources. These are all the DePINs that can be run on a desktop, a laptop, a Raspberry Pi, and ultimately allowing the customer, as they're sharing their resources in the DePIN space, earning tokens. And so just to sort of, once again, just to take a step back, our view of DePIN is it's the next wave of opportunity in the Web3 space. DePIN as a term is about a year old, and ultimately it's taking all the core centralized infrastructure that we know exists today and moving it into a decentralized manner. And services like, and just to maybe sort of delve down, having companies like Amazon and Google, which are centralized, being replaced by decentralized versions. Helium 5G in the US is really growing. It's actually the fastest growing telco in the US, and it's all decentralized. And then there's artificial intelligence, and being able to provide infrastructure that trains AI models, as well as things like CDNs, content distribution networks, and VPNs, virtual private networks. So there are quite a number of verticals in this particular space that ultimately will become decentralized. It's really the whole ethos of the internet, and it's really that blockchain has finally enabled this to become a reality. Next slide. So our vision at Havelo is to really bring together all of these various DePINs into a Web 2.0 environment. And ultimately what that does is it makes DePIN accessible to the mass market. And so what we've built is as simple as someone installing an app on their spare desktop or laptop or their Raspberry Pi. And as they contribute their computer resources, their CPU, their GPU, their bandwidth or storage, they are able to earn multiple DePIN tokens. Next. So the problem that we've identified is that we know that crypto for a lot of people is complicated, particularly with the concept of private keys, and for DePIN, it's even more complicated as an industry. And ultimately, and without sort of getting too techie, you need to have a medium level of technical knowledge to be able to run most of the DePINs out there. So in that respect, next slide, that's really the solution that Havelo has created. Ultimately, what we're doing is creating a very simple dashboard for the user. And the way this works is someone installs Havelo. Havelo will work out what system resources they have to share, like their memory, their storage, their CPU, their GPU. And then it will install the best 6 to 8 DePINs in order to maximize the ROI. So value proposition number one is that we make DePIN, accessing DePIN, super simple. And then value proposition number two is over time, our AI-based platform will also personalize the DPINs that are running on your specific machine in order to maximize the ROI. And I can get into details if someone's got questions, but I'm just going to say that's a really important part of the value proposition, because different DPINs will fall in and out of flavor, and there'll be different rewards provided across different DPINs in different countries. And so this ability to personalize, in our view, is really, really important. Next. And so the app that we've built is as simple as download, install, plug in your wallet details or your fiat account details and start earning. Next. And the reason, and I'm not going to get too techie, too nerdy here, but the reason that we can make this really simple from a consumer-facing perspective is because behind the scenes, we are orchestrating and doing a bunch of heavy lifting, like generating and managing public and private keys, swapping tokens, paying gas, running each of the nodes in segregated and containerized nodes in order to, for great level of security and control. So, unless someone's got some, hardcore technical questions, I think that the key here is we are orchestrating all of these quite challenging and quite technical processes behind the scenes. So a user doesn't even need to know about crypto. All they need to do is to download Havelo if they've got a spare, and we say spare desktop and laptop because it needs to be connected to the internet and power 24/7. Install Havelo, click a few buttons, and then automatically our system will take over. It will share all the various resources on that person's machine, and then that person will get paid either in tokens, in the native tokens of that DPIN, or in fiat. So you actually don't even need to be you don't even need to know about crypto. You just need to have a spare computer. You install it, plug in your US dollar, euro, Australian, Canadian dollar account, and then we basically pay you directly in fiat. So you don't even have to think about crypto if you don't want to. Next. This just gives a bit of an overview in regards to some technical details. Late last year, we went live with an internal beta for Mac and Windows, and it was really to prove to ourselves, as well as to a number of our investors, that we can run a Web3 DPIN in a Web 2.0 environment. It's a very technically challenging thing to do, and I guess we wanted to make sure that we had the technical nous in order to be able to do it. We've been able to do that, and we're now in the process of relaunching V1 version 1. Built out in Go, which is a Google language, much more scalable, and then the ability to offer a mobile version, which we think is tremendous opportunity, which really opens up our addressable market, as well as offering payments not only in fiat, in stable coin, and then building out an API and an SDK that allows other new DPIN projects to connect into Havelo. This is just a bit of a snapshot. There's much, much more detail behind this. Next. Our go-to-market, there are really two core drivers around our go-to-market. Obviously, there's a direct-to-consumer aspect. We'll be using all the usual social channels like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook in order to get out there. But where we believe we have the biggest opportunity in terms of bang for buck is through B2B partnerships. This is not too dissimilar from the Banksa model, where Banksa did deals with hundreds of partners, exchanges, wallets around the world. You see 3 exchanges listed there. They're already investors and partners with Havelo, and between the 3 of them, they've got over 2 million active users. We also are talking to a number of other exchanges out there as well. We are also got an exclusive deal with Hotspotty, who's the largest helium DPIN. Helium is one of the biggest DPINs out there, and that's part of our go-to-market. And we're also working with and speaking to a number of DPIN projects themselves. And to be clear, we don't need the permission of any DPIN to integrate, because we operate in a permissionless environment, and we also have an in-principle agreement with the African Chamber of Commerce. We see this having tremendous opportunity and potential in emerging markets as well. Next slide. The business model is such where the app is free, and we take a revenue share, effectively a commission of all the tokens mined. And for Havelo, there'll be other revenue streams like staking and providing liquidity to various pools, given that we will be holding a bunch of DPIN tokens ourselves as treasury. And we are also working on our own Havelo token, which I'm happy to elaborate if there are any specific questions about that. Next. As Justin mentioned, and as we announced last week, Havelo raised 2.5 million from really a large and well-known group in the space. Our co-leads were NGC, Blockchain, and Blockchain Founders Fund. Between the three leads, I think they've made over 1,000 crypto investments. They're very, very deep in the space. And then there's a big group of investors across the US, Canada, Europe, Middle East, as well Asia and Australia. So, we've really brought on a big group of investors that can really help us grow and follow in terms of the next potential or the next round over the next 12 or so months. Next. In terms of the application of funds, it's really engineering and customer acquisition. Next. And really that's kind of at a summary, all things Havelo. Definitely happy to answer any people's questions. So maybe Alfred, you can come back and give us a bit of an overview, and maybe we can get rid of the slides.
Stop share. There we go. All righty. Thank you very much, Justin and Dom, for that detailed presentation. We have had quite a few questions come in already. If anyone does have any they'd like addressed, please type them into your Q&A box at the bottom of your screen marked by the speech bubbles. Dom, I'll direct the first question to you. It's from Ryan. Where is the immediate target market for Havelo? Will it be available in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess our target market are people that have a Windows laptop or desktop. The first V1 version will be Windows, just purely because there's many more Windows machines out there than what there is Macs. But we are also behind the scenes working on a Mac and a Linux version. In terms of the audiences, it's really global. The US is obviously part of our target market. And the three partners that we have are very much Southeast Asian focused. So that's partly how we're going to get access to that particular demographic or that particular audience. But ultimately, it's a product that can be used by anyone who has a spare desktop and laptop. And the reason we say spare desktop and laptop is because the computer needs to be set up and connected to the power and internet 24/7. People need to think of this as they're running their own, like mini business. And sometimes I get asked, well, what's the potential in terms of what kind of earnings can someone make? And I think it ultimately depends on what kind of desktop and laptop people are running. You can be earning anywhere from a low spec machine, $20 a month, up to $200 or $300 per month. If you're running a really good, you're a gamer and you've got a GPU, which is used to train AI models. And so it all depends on the specs of the machine. We've actually gone back, and our oldest machine we're running on is a 2010 Mac, a 2014 Windows machine. So in that respect, we've made this compatible with all the hardware, very old hardware, and ultimately making the ability for someone to share their resources as part of the DeepIn network, and then earning either DeepIn tokens or earning fiat money, Euro, GBP, US dollar, Canadian dollar. We've made that super, super simple. And this is ultimately, not too dissimilar from the banks division and other companies I'm involved on, is how do we bring blockchain and crypto to the mass market?
Thanks, Tom. Question from Jack. Can you talk to the financial model? Is it fiat-based or does it rely on appreciation of tokens and coins?
So it actually doesn't rely on the appreciation of tokens. So the model works, and just to sort of maybe delve deep, and Justin, feel free to jump in at any point. So a user will install Havelo, and let's just say there are 8 different DeepIns running, a storage DeepIn like Storage, a VPN like Mysterium, render network for their GPU. So let's just say they're running 8 different DeepIns. That customer will be earning every month 8 different DeepIn tokens. And so what that customer will be able to do, and as we know, we're just about to enter a bull market in our view, or in my particular view. And so there could be, and I think there will be appreciation. We've already seen appreciation with regards to those tokens, but our business model doesn't rely on that. For the users who want to get paid in fiat, we'll have a service that will convert those tokens either into a stable coin like USDT or USDC, or directly into fiat, and pay that money directly into their bank account. So they don't even need to touch or think about crypto. They can just install Havelo and basically earn fiat money. And when I say fiat money, I'm talking US, Euro, Canadian, Australian dollars. And in terms of from a Havelo perspective, we'll be earning a revenue share, a percentage share of all those tokens. So ultimately, we're going to get paid in tokens, and then we'll have a treasury management policy where some of those tokens will be converted into fiat, because some salaries and expenses do need to be paid in fiat. But out there are many companies that are, and employees, would you believe, that are actually willing to get paid either in stable coins like USDT or USDC, or actually in the native token themselves. So, we're kind of to a degree entering this new world. But in answering your question, we'll be earning tokens and then converting those tokens into fiat.
Thanks, Tom. A question from Bernard. Are there any revenue expectations you can share?
So the answer is we've obviously got internal forecasts and expectations that we've created. Absolutely, that's part of how we were able to raise money. I think given the public nature of Blockmate, I think it would be remiss of us to get into that level of detail, at least on this particular call. Suffice to say, what I will say is that Havelo is, at its core, it's a software company. And software companies typically have a high degree of leverage. So you would expect us to have a very strong EBITDA margin, a 40 to 50% EBITDA margin, because ultimately we are a software company at its core. And so we're expecting a fairly modest uptake in the first 12 months. And then over the next 3 to 4 years, we're ultimately, we're expecting millions of users generating tens of millions of dollars of top line revenue. And then obviously a big chunk of that, the expectation is, will flow directly to the bottom line.
I'm going to combine a question from Bernard and Julie. Does Blockmate need to raise money? And Julie's question is, will there be a token raise?
Sorry, I missed that, Alfred. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah. Does Blockmate need to raise money, and would it come in the form of a token raise?
So any token raise would come into Havelo. So Havelo is a subsidiary. And just like this current raise, it raised the 2.5, that's for Havelo. And if it does a token raise, it's within Havelo. So the second part is a no. And Blockmate, post the exit of Midpoint, has dramatically reduced its burn, and therefore has not needed to raise money as urgently as it otherwise would have, and at a suitable time. Blockmate is an expansionary company looking to expand the projects it's involved with, and support them, and therefore it will, as it has in the past, tactically raise money at opportune times.
Thanks, Justin. I'll stay with you. Question from Paul, who's been an investor.
Just on Alfred, just on the token, I mentioned the token briefly in the presentation, and I did mention that we would look to launch our own token, and without once again getting too nerdy and technical around the token and its utility. At a high level, it will be very much a utility token, and then DPINs that want to use our network on the demand side will have to buy and stake that token. So there's some, let's call it, in terms of building and creating a market for that particular token. We have already been approached by quite a number of investors asking us whether or not Hevelo would consider doing a token raise. And I'll say on a very soft basis, and we have not officially gone out there, Hevelo could easily raise 3 to 5 million US if we were to do a token raise tomorrow. Right now, we're not rushing it. We've still got some fine tuning to do with regards to our tokenomics. We want to get that 100% right before we launch. And the other point I want to talk about, the 3 to 5 million, it would be at a valuation significantly higher. I'm talking 2 or 3x higher than the last raise as well. I think that they're the other two key points. And so, without wanting to, extrapolate what that means for Blockmate shareholders in terms of cents per share, I'll let people do their own math, but it's materially higher than where we are today.
Thank you, Dom. Justin, I'll direct this one to you. It's from Paul, who's been an investor for a long time. He would like to know what is being done to raise the awareness of Blockmate and generate more buying to ultimately see a higher share price.
Thanks, Paul. Our focus, and with Dom's 24 plus years of running listed companies in the tech scene, we're focused on building businesses over the long term. And so our approach, yes, we've been quiet, but yes, it's been a crypto winter. We're very pleased to say that we can feel a significant change in the market and the level of interest as reflected by this rapid 80% up round. And so all our interests are aligned. We want the share price to go up, but based on in a long-term sustainable way, based on the underlying fundamentals and growth of the business. So we do believe that Hevelo is now on a fascinating platform on both the product development side, where we expect to announce the launch of the product within a short period of time, plus the ability to announce potentially even on a monthly basis, but minimum quarterly basis, the user adoption. So with just those two metrics, we'll have plenty to keep the market informed, and therefore plenty to roadshow and support the share price. So totally agree with you, Paul. To date, there's now been a significant change.
Yeah, I think just to jump in, Paul, and I'll put my Blockmate shareholder on, being I think the single largest shareholder in the company. The last 12 months has really been about housekeeping at the Blockmate level and building at the Hevelo level. I think we're now at the point where we actually have something meaningful to talk about. And so the last 12 months, it was really stay below the radar. I think you're going to see the next 12 months, our heads will be popping out above the radar. And Justin is fortunately located in Toronto, and he only needs to walk down the street, and basically, knock heads with, or not knock heads, brush shoulders, I think is the term, with brokers. And so, that IR plan is certainly, in our sights. And yes, we do want to see a high share price because there's been no liquidity or volume. But I think we now have something meaningful to talk about.
Thanks, Dom. We've just got 2 more questions, so if anyone does have any, please type them into the Q&A box. Justin, I might start this one with you. It's from Jason. What would an exit from Hevelo look like? Would it be a Blockmate divestment or a separate IPO?
So, first of all, as I hinted before, the businesses we go into because we see a global market need. We see that need and the expansion to grow over the long term. We don't go after short fads, and Hevelo is a classic case in point. We could easily see Hevelo's growth continuing over a 10+ year perspective. It's literally, in other words, it's the app store of crypto mining. It's merging available hardware with networks that are looking to roll out services. So our intent is to hang on to that asset for as long as we possibly can. And as you've just seen with that incredible set of logos of investors, that quality of investor base is very happy to invest in private or in token. And so there's actually no need to list Hyvelo post the token raise, because then Hyvelo is the token. So the token would actually be the listing and the liquidity event of Hyvelo. And from a Blockmate point of view, we would want to hang on to those tokens as long as we possibly could. Dominic?
Yeah, I think that's they're all really good points. If I'm looking forward, and I'm just going to put my Hyvelo hat on for a moment, and just look at DePIN as a sector and what it means for the incumbents over the next 5 to 10 years. I can see companies like Hyvelo being acquired by the big infrastructure players. And I've mentioned Amazon and the Googles of the world. But if you go further upstream, you think of companies like Cisco that produce the hardware that actually run these particular networks. Ultimately, what Hyvelo and the whole DePIN industry is doing is, to a degree, marginalizing them. And I can see groups like Netgear, Cisco, and others moving into the DePIN space to basically own part of that value, that pie. And someone like a Cisco, could potentially, enter the space, ultimately through acquisitions, because these guys don't build stuff from scratch, and then launch an appliance that they can make available to all the Hyvelo users. So they don't need to use their computer. It's basically like a little box. You plug it into power and internet, and it does it all behind the scenes using, say, the Cisco hardware and the Hyvelo software, running it on the sort of top end. So they're just, some of the potential opportunities that we see over the horizon. I think it's still too early to be talking about an exit. I think just in terms of value and I guess the next key metrics from a financial perspective, from a cap raise perspective, there will be other rounds with regards to Hyvelo and materially higher valuations, and more likely at the token level. So it means it's not dilutionary to existing shareholders. It will be the token. And so people will be able to participate in Hyvelo through the token. And obviously, as I said, there's a bunch of work that we're doing behind the scenes there that we'll obviously share at the appropriate point in time.
Excellent. And there's just one last question. I might send this one to you, Dom, from Ryan. Is there an internal time frame of when we might expect 1 million users on Hyvelo?
Once again, we haven't really made any forecasts, but over the next couple of years, Helium was the fastest growing DePIN out there with over 1 million users over a couple of years. That was really in the IoT space, where you had to go and buy a physical device for $500, or the 5G devices are about $1,000, and then install it, plug it in, install it into your home. And they grew to 1 million in under 3 years. And there was a big CapEx spend. What Hyvelo is doing is really turning the whole industry to a degree on its head and using existing infrastructure and hardware out there. I think we can get to 1 million users faster than what they did, and particularly through our partnership model, working with exchanges and working with various partners. So that's kind of the way that I see it. But as I said, we're not making any particular forecasts. But all I'll say is we're going to be much more proactive in terms of our communication, both in terms of TSX releases as well as emails out to our stakeholders. So all I'll say is just watch this space.
Excellent. Alrighty, we are now running a bit tight on time. So if anyone does have any questions, please email them in, and we'll get Justin or Dom to respond via email. A recording of this webcast will also be made available tomorrow on the Blockmate website. So look, on behalf of Blockmate shareholders and those in attendance, Justin and Dom, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thanks, Alfred.
Thanks.